and welcome to our Parent-Teacher Conference COVID-19 edition. In recent weeks, I've had the opportunity to speak with many parents about questions they had concerning the upcoming school year, and I'm just grateful that here at DOJM we were able to assemble this group of panelists who are able to answer your questions and concerns and just give us some information, which is something that's been sorely lacking. So we're asking that as you come in, you would like, comment, and share so that others can reap the benefits. I'm going to tell you to go ahead and grab your pen and your notebook. I've got mine ready to go so we can jot down this information. And now I'm going to kick it over to my panelists for them to introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Dr. Demetra Williams. I have been in the virtual education field for over 8 years, in the education field for over 17 years. I am a virtual instructor in Orange County, Florida.
Hi, my name is Justin T. Johnson. I'm a middle school business education teacher in DeKalb, but I'm originally from Bainbridge, Georgia. Glad to be here.
Hi, my name is Latoya Williams, and I am the Family Engagement Coordinator at Thomas County Middle School.
Hi, I'm Tina McBride. I am the Student Services Director for Thomasville City Schools, educator for 25 plus years.
Thank you all so much for being here this evening. And without any further ado, we're going to go ahead and jump into our questions. So the first question that we have, considering the anxiety that parents are having as the school year is preparing to get started, what would you say to parents who are experiencing anxiety as the school year approaches? Mr. Johnson, if you'd answer that for us.
So in regards to the anxiety, I'd just kind of say, give grace here, not just to the educators, but also your children and then yourself as well. Make sure you just give yourself grace. And it's not going to be perfect, but we will figure it out and figure it out as well together. And then do something that you enjoy doing to take your mind off of the current situation. I'll just be honest, because the more you think about it, the tougher it gets.
That's great advice. Thank you. Does any of the rest of our panelists have any thing they would like to say to parents?
I would say whatever decision you make, just please know it's best for you and your family. Don't let anybody guilt you or make you feel bad about sending your kid to school, keeping your kid home, going to virtual school, doing a hybrid. Whatever decision you make for you and your family, I applaud you now.
That's a really great advice. So those two things were give yourself grace, which is so important, so very important, and know that you're making the right decision for your family. Really good. All right, the next question I have is what resources would you recommend for students who are remote learning, and how can parents integrate these into their students' routine to set them up for success before we even get into the school year?
So some things that we can use for remote learning is, one, make sure they have a computer that can be used and good Wi-Fi. We don't want to go out and get the cheapest Wi-Fi because it's the cheapest price. We want to make sure that our kids have enough speed to actually get on the computer and do their assignments. And we want to make sure that you have Flash, make sure you have some type of Word documents that students can use. Make sure that one thing I did at my household is we created a calendar and we did it on a whiteboard. So we went out and got a whiteboard. And so my son knew what was expected every day. So there was no shock. On Tuesdays at 2:00, you should be doing your reading lesson. And so get a calendar that everyone can see. And so everyone is on the same page. And make sure you have pen and paper because you want your students to take notes. The things that are needed for virtual is a lot different. But like I said, make sure you have a computer with working Wi-Fi. You might want a printer that you can print out your students' lessons for them. And then make sure you have a schedule that everyone can stick to. And when you're creating a schedule, make sure it's a schedule that's good for you and your family and not just for your student.
That is really, really good.
Tiffany, if I may add to that, I'd also say, definitely making sure I agree with the scheduling piece too, but then being very intentional about creating that positive relationship with all of every adult or educator that your child will encounter or that you will need along this journey. So, I know most of you, everybody watching here, surely has that relationship with their child's educators. But you want to take it an extra step and say, hey, I know this is going to be a tough time. And so how can we build that positive relationship to do what's best for the child?
Yes.
I think even with that, not just with your child's teacher, I was on a call yesterday and we talked about make sure you get a village because you're going to need help with this. Maybe you're not good at math and your cousin is or your friend is. So make sure a resource is your family members, your friends, and your village. So make sure one of your resources is your village of people that are going to help you with this.
That is awesome advice. I think sometimes as parents, we get so overwhelmed in thinking about what all it is that we have to do that we don't always remember that we do have a support system that we can use. And everyone understands that it's been a trying time for all of us, whether you're a parent, a community member, or whomever. And so that important piece is us coming together and working together for success of the children, of the school year as a whole, and everybody involved. So that's great. Thank you. Okay, Ms. McBride, the next question is coming your way. Do school systems have a plan in place for parents who don't necessarily have the flexibility to work from home as businesses are reopening, but also don't really quite feel comfortable sending their children to school yet?
I would say that we're trying our best to encourage parents to make the best decision for them, depending on their work situation. We know that our resources in the community to provide care or, some supervision for children is limited now because of the pandemic. We're hopeful that parents will make the correct decision for their child. If they are having some concerns, we're asking parents to reach out to the schools to help guide them in that process and make the correct decision, depending on what is best for them and their child. We know that parents have to work. We understand that. So we are hopeful that they have some extended family that can help support them in the decision to do virtual if they decide to do virtual. So that's what we're hopeful for as a district and as schools try to reopen. We know that the Boys and Girls Club here locally, I'm not sure if they're offering anything during the day for virtual learners. I have not heard that information, or if the resource center is as well. Those are usually the two avenues that we use as resources for parents if they need assistance.
Okay, but am I correct that there's new information that's coming out, in the days that are coming?
The information changes daily as far as schools reopening. Everybody on this panel probably knows that as well, as we're trying to plan for reopening. So every day is different. We don't know from that day what to expect and what to plan for. So we're trying our best as the days go by to plan accordingly.
Okay. Well, I think it's really important the point that you made that parents don't have to wait for the schools to reach out to them, but they can be proactive in making those phone calls.
Yes, please don't wait till the schools reach out to you. If you have some concerns, please reach out to the schools. So we know that both our school systems here locally and even where Dr. Williams and Mr. Johnson are, I'm sure they have someone available to readily access and answer questions if parents need answers to their questions. So please reach out. Don't feel that you have to be rushed to make a decision. If you feel, you're going back and forth and really don't know what to do, just reach out to your local schools.
Thank you. That's really good information. How do teachers and parents work together to maintain student engagement in learning from a distance? Because that's one of the things I've been hearing a lot from parents is because of how quickly things happened with the pandemic and students going from being at the brick and mortar school to all of a sudden, remote learning, not really having an opportunity to figure it out, but just were thrown into the situation. So how can teachers and parents work together to make that an easier time for students and help keep them engaged in their learning?
Okay, well, I think I solved my technology problems just in time for that question. My question come up. And, Ms. Harris and other panel guests here who are educators, it's always a challenge to keep an appropriate line of communication open with parents. That's something that's a challenge for us always in the best of times. But right now, just as I heard Mrs. McBride say, uh, things change every day. So keeping in touch is going to be critical. And keeping in touch is not just to know what the day-to-day routine is, it's just specifically to know what's going on with your child. There are uh, some initial things that parents need to do for to start up that communication. Both of the school districts have web pages. I've checked both our local Thomas County and Thomasville City School Districts. At the end of our broadcast, I think Mr. Davis is going to post those access links. But there is just rich information on both those websites, what to do, who to see, where to go. I would encourage parents to get, first of all, the email addresses of the teachers, the administrator, if they feel that they can't resolve or effectively communicate with the teacher, to speak with the principal. Having been a school superintendent, I would say don't go to the superintendent first. Start at the school level. That's the most effective way to start resolving any type of communication issue. But the parents need to get themselves familiar with the expectations, first of all, so that when they call, they are already armed with the information they need, knowing how work is going to be collected or turned in or uploaded and sent to the teacher. They need to know how they are expected to monitor both online or the classwork as it's turned in, as always, that traditional way. As a part of that communication, they need to observe their child at home as far as their attitude, whether they're experiencing frustration. The same thing for those parents whose children are returning to the traditional setting. They can communicate with the teacher about what they're observing. The child is in a setting, missing their peers who are online. There's a communication that needs to happen there so that that child has no undue anxiety or frustrations about not seeing their best friend or all of their friends they saw the previous year, and start asking, why can't I do, the other, one thing or the other? Because I see on both school sites, once you make that selection, for Thomasville City Schools, you're in there if you're K-5 for that first 9 weeks in the semester. If you're in for middle school and high school, Ms. Williams can probably tell you what that those parameters are for the county. But parents just need to definitely find out how that teacher wants to be reached, and understand that the teacher does have a life and would not be checking emails at midnight. And so don't make ridiculous or unreasonable, claim that I can't reach my teacher. And you see that the time that you tried to email that teacher was 4 a.m. Give the teacher time. That teacher now, instead of being able to have that face-to-face, has to work all day online or in person, and still check on those students who may have opted for, in some districts, a hybrid combination of online and in person, or one or the other. And then many of our teachers have children themselves. And just as teachers have always had, a private and home life, I think Corona has changed all of our lives in such a way that people think we are accessible 24/7, just as Facebook and Instagram and other websites are. So be realistic. I think the administrators, and Ms. McBride will certainly, back me up on this. The administrators will definitely set an expectation for the teachers to communicate in a timely manner. And then, since we are using email so much, one thing that I thought about was to please make sure that you use proper email etiquette. So when you're upset, don't send it in all caps, bold. Don't
Please.
send, emojis, ugly face emojis. Be respectful in that communication, just as we are in person. After 33 years in education, I know that, you can be a little more bold when you're not in person and you're using email or other types of alternate communication. But you need to be respectful and remember your tone can come through on emails just as they can in person.
Definitely. Definitely. I think that even ties back to what Mr. Johnson said earlier about grace. Not only giving yourself grace, but extending grace to those that are in the school systems and doing the best they can with the situation that we're currently in. And we're all impacted by it, not just ourselves and our students. So that's really great information. So thank you, Dr. Everett.
Thank
And
you.
Ms. Harris, it's important too that parents make sure their contact information is up to date and stays up to date.
Yes.
Yeah, that's more important now, more than ever.
Right, especially now.
Yes. Okay. Let's see, where are we? How will administrators support teachers and parents by engaging with students at a distance? I know one of the things I used to see when I was at the middle school years ago is the principal and the assistant principal would come in and walk through the hallways and engage with students that way. So how will administrators do that virtually in making sure that they form those connections with students?
Okay, so I am not an administrator. However, my husband is. And so I asked him this question. And he said he thinks it's more important to know how parents look at it and how teachers look at it and what they think it should look like. Because everybody's idea of support is different. But he said he feels like it's important that administrators be supportive and flexible and attentive. But it's also important for teachers to give information, accurate and timely information to them so that they can address any concerns or anything that may be going on, so that they can support them in the proper way. But for us at the middle school this year, we were trying to plan a family engagement night and host a academic parent teacher team, which allows for teachers and parents to come together, and teachers can show parents how to practice activities at home with their kids, such as reading fluency and math fluency. So it kind of builds a bridge from home to school and school to home. So whatever the kids are seeing at school, the way the teacher taught them at school. I know a lot of times when you're at home and you're trying to show your child homework, and they're like, well, my teacher didn't show it to me that way. I didn't learn it that way. Well, now this is an opportunity for teachers to show that to parents. The parents go in the classroom and sit as a student, and they get to learn that and practice that with them. But we might have to do it online. Everything is subject to change. But we have the opportunity to practice activities with parents so that they can take that home and work with the student at home as much as possible. I know it worked really well with the lower grades. It should also work pretty well with the middle grades. But this allows for parents to take an active role in setting high expectations and monitoring their child's growth and achievement as well. So when they go to the classroom, they'll see what the expectations are. But that is something that the administrators are putting together to build a academic parent teacher team, so that parents and teachers can work together to kind of build that bridge from home to school and school to home.
Yes, it's so important even for students to know that my parents and my teachers are working together and that they're communicating. So you're not missing anything in the middle. So that's a really important point.
Miss Williams.
Yes.
Will the school be recording those demonstration lessons?
that is the plan, to record, because we don't know how COVID is going to go with the school year, and what the Department of Education will allow as far as visitation and things like that. So it may have to all be online, and so that is just something that we're working on now, but everything is subject to change.
And the reason that I asked is that equity has been such a big piece of the communication. As we talk about resources available to the children, and now
Right.
this resource that I commend the county schools for doing this for parents. If those are recorded, it means that parents who may not be able to join at the time that you host that event, they can go
Absolutely.
back and look at the
Yes.
demonstration video to find out how to do those math problems. I've learned from my second grade granddaughter, 6 + 4 is 10 my way, but I can't teach it to her the new way. And, I was a teacher, but that was a long time ago and things have changed. So the demonstration videos, I would think, would be great to be able to record and post those so that parents can access them later.
Yes.
Yes, I think it's important to note too that I'm not sure if the systems have changed, but I know that you guys always have your school websites with the teacher pages that parents can access. There's also Remind, where things are sent out that way. And I know I've even gotten videos of my daughter in science class doing experiments, through Remind, for the teacher being able to share it that way. So those are some options that we've, had available to us to be able to communicate that. And so parents, no matter if you have a computer at home or even if you just have your smartphone, you have a way to be able to utilize the resources that are being given by the schools.
Right.
And Ms. Harris, but also to Ms. Williams, I also think it's important that parents or guardians, caretakers also become more familiar with, or are given the opportunity to become more familiar with the learning management systems. So for instance, if the district has, It's Learning, or if they're going to use Google Classroom, that it allows the parents to become more familiar with that platform so that they can better assist their child or their children.
Agreed.
And something that
I also think it's important.
I'm sorry, Dr. Williams.
Go ahead, Ms. McBride.
Something that we're going to do for our system is do a virtual orientation for those parents that have signed up for virtual school, to get them familiar with the LMS, so they'll know exactly what is expected and what they need to do as parents. So they need to be mindful and look out for that. It's all coming virtual. So they need to make sure their email addresses are correct, because that announcement will be sent via email. So just be mindful that that's one avenue we're doing to get parents used to the Google Online and whatever platform we're using for virtual learning.
I think parents also need to realize is they are also your child's teacher again. We were used to sending our kids to school and them coming home with homework. As a virtual instructor, I always tell my parents, you put a 12-year-old in charge of their own education by not asking or not sitting with them or not doing any kind of work with them. And so if the parent has the ability to kind of sit with them and see what they're learning, you're also a facilitator. And this is a big proponent of teamwork. We always say teamwork makes the dream work, but right now the parent and the teacher are so important as a teammate. And so it's important that you all have a positive communication up front.
Yes.
Okay. The next question we had up was, how do parents evaluate if their student is truly learning? And how can they, with those parameters that Dr. Everett gave earlier about you being locked in for 9 weeks or a semester, depending on your school system, how does the parent address those learning gaps so that their child doesn't fall behind before they can make a change to, something else if they needed to do that?
It's mindful to be aware of the assessments that are given online, that parents are mindful that those will be assessed and that they need to be looking at those grades as they're giving grades through the platform that they're in virtually. They also will probably have screenings at some point, because we have other curriculum that give screenings. We're just not sure right now how that's going to look and what it's going to look like. So they need to be aware of those screenings and the scores that those students receive on those screenings as well, to be able to access and know how their child is, and hopefully compare it to where they were previously.
Okay. That's really good. Did anybody else have anything on that? Okay, moving right along. What protocols are in place for those returning to the physical school? And I'll throw that question out to Mrs. Latoya Williams and Ms. Tina McBride.
Okay, well, so far, what I know is that in the mornings when kids arrive at the schools, they will be taking the temperatures before they enter the building. They will also be giving students, each student will receive 2 masks that are reusable for them to use before they enter the building as well. Things have changed just since the other day when we had our meeting about how things were going to go and what was going to happen. But I do know that at Thomas County Middle School, it's a very large population. And so the kids are going straight to classrooms, not going to breakfast. They will eat in their homeroom class for breakfast and for lunch. They won't be able to gather in the gym when they get to school early in the morning. They will have to separate by grade level. And I do know if they're riding the bus, they're supposed to wear a mask. But like I said, things could have changed since the other day when we had our meeting. And if their temperature is over a certain point, they will not be allowed to enter the building. They will have to call their parent to come pick them up, and they will have a designated area to wait in. I know for every staff member and teacher that the county did order masks and the face shields for every staff member to wear. So at this point, that is just what I do know. But like I said, things change daily, so we have to be flexible. But as of right now, that is what's happening.
Thomasville is very fortunate because the 2 systems are really trying to work together and have some of the similar procedures in place. The superintendents are probably talking daily, but Latoya is correct that things are changing as of 5:45 today. As a matter of fact, things change. So our protocol is, let's start. Open house will be virtual for everyone except kindergarten and 6th graders and 9th graders. They have assigned times, and I really don't know it off the top of my head, but everyone else will be virtual. Bus riders will be given a temperature check before they get on the bus every morning. They will be given a mask. They have to wear a mask on the bus. Those that ride to school will also have a temperature check before they enter the building. And this is overarching for the district as of today. Schools will have specific plans in place as far as entering the building, classroom changes, all of that good stuff. But the overarching protocol in place is that in common areas, all students have to have on masks. If it's class changes or if they're in a common area, the teachers have to have on masks if they're in a common area or standing in a hallway during class changes. Our teachers as well are being provided masks and shields. Every staff member will have that as well. Schools are known, they have to have an isolation room in place in case a child does expose or seem to have some of the symptoms. And we make contact with the parent. We have procedures in place for cafeteria that are different by site, depending on the size, because the schools are different. So all those schools have different protocols in place for changing classes, lunch, breakfast, and all dismissal. So our parents need to be mindful that the schools have different things in place by sites, but some of the things are overarching for the district. But if they want to know specifically for that school, they need to reach out to the school administrator.
Okay.
And Ms. Harrod, I'll add that parents can make that a good process, or they can make it stressful for everyone. The parents need to familiarize themselves with the protocols just described, and they need to have a positive attitude so that when their children get to school, they aren't complaining about wearing masks. They aren't complaining about how the lunches are set up. They aren't complaining about the temperature checks, the getting on the bus, the social distancing. Parents can help us set that tone of cooperation so that the teachers and the administrators don't have to become mask police. And one of the pieces I read in researching for this panel was that bullying is on the minds of many of the children now, based on just national research as a part of some of the anxiety. Some of you may have seen a cartoon where it indicated that children were teasing. You don't have on a designer mask. You have on a cheap mask. Just as children, what encouraged school systems to go to uniforms to keep, that type of bullying. I can foresee it because every department store and every designer has now come out with their own specializes. No more the homemade mask. And parents need to check their attitude and set that tone for the children to be cooperative. This is something that none of us have done before. It's not the most comfortable thing, but I think that if parents help set that tone of cooperation before the children get to school, teachers and administrators won't have as hard of a time getting that routine established of what's expected, and let's just do it and keep it moving.
Yes,
I agree.
that's been true as long as we've been in school, but even more so now, I would say, with the parameters that we have.
That's right.
Yes, ma'am. Okay. For students that do not have access to the internet at home, at the end of the school year, lots of students have the opportunity to get packets to be able to turn in periodically to teachers. Can you all answer as to whether or not that's something that would be available at the start of the school year?
For Thomasville and Thomas County, I know both of us have gotten notice from the state of Georgia that we qualify for transmitters. The county schools qualify for a certain amount, and the city schools qualify for a certain number. So we're trying to collaborate between the two of us to ensure that the transmitters don't end up in the same locations around the community. We know the county has a bigger area to cover as far as transmitters, and we're told by the state that the transmitters will cover about 300 feet, I believe it says. So both school systems have qualified for transmitters to provide internet connectivity. It's just a matter of us getting the information in that we need and how fast the turnaround will be. LaToya, Ms. Williams.
I think at some point packets will maybe disappear, but right now I really don't know. I know that they were provided for like the lower grade levels, like pre-K and kindergarten when we first got out in the spring. However, like Ms. McBride said, we are trying to provide internet connection in the rural communities to where they may not have internet access, and provide Wi-Fi hotspots like at the local community libraries and things like that, so that people are able to connect to the internet via their Chromebook or laptop or whatever it may have you. But at some point, I'm not sure how long packets may be distributed or if they will be at the beginning of the school year or what.
The Department of Education for Georgia also has provided the school systems with packets as well for the upcoming year for grades K through 8 for 10 days. Okay. So that is still something that's a resource if needed by schools.
Okay. And Ms. Harris, I contacted the city of Thomasville to find out what type of connectivity. CNS does have a public access, but believe me, it's over exaggerated as to the access. I'll be absolutely transparent with you. The officials said that only if parents will go downtown or in the parking lot of Thomas County Public Library, can they access the public free internet service. So parents need to understand that limitation. And in the Thomasville City profile, which I know, as they have said, it continues to change, it was stated that they have in each of the parking lots at the schools, there would be access points. And then Thomas County said that there are 18 Wi-Fi hotspots available at various locations throughout the county. Now, that's the best information I could get as of this morning. And I know that may change, but parents know if all else fails, you can go and park downtown.
Ms. Harris, if I can also add something there. This is where it is going to take a community effort as well, in regards to building those partnerships. So we have, you might have the Boys and Girls Club, or you might have local churches that have access to high-speed internet, and maybe classrooms. And so even, setting up those schedules. So being creative, we've heard around the state that there are some school districts that are utilizing their school buses as those hot spots. So parking them in the rural areas. Being from Decatur County, we run into that issue a lot, because we think inner city, the city part of Bainbridge, but then you have the rural areas. And so, to ensure, as Dr. Everett said, with the equity issue or inequity that exist within our school districts, but making sure that those are addressed, and doing what's best for our students.
And that's why it's also important, and piggybacking off of Mr. Johnson, not even just churches. We need to look at these local businesses and see if they'll partner with the school systems as well, and see if they'll provide, open up a hotspot for students. We need to make sure every student has access to the internet wherever they are, even if they have to walk, a couple yards, or, maybe a little bit. But we need to make sure that we're just not partnering with churches. This is a community effort. Schools cannot solve this alone. And that's going to go into, I think, another question I'll talk about later, but schools can't do this alone. And I think schools are really seeing that it is not just a school issue anymore.
Thank you all. Those are good. Let's see. Okay, so this one is kind of a two-part question. How did the emergency response to COVID-19 impact the future of learning, and how education will be reimagined?
That's where I was going to. Education is not, we blame teachers and schools for everything. Like, my kid didn't learn, it's the teacher's fault. My kid didn't do this, it's the school's fault. I think parents and everyone else is saying that teachers absolutely need help, and teachers cannot do this alone. Every stakeholder, it's important for every stakeholder to be involved in a child's education. The businesses need to be involved, because those can be your next business owners or your next employees. Yeah. I think we realize that education is not a one-faceted thing anymore. It's not just a school system anymore. This, like I said, it's a little bit ago, the school systems cannot do this by themselves. And the fact that we're relying only on the school system to make decisions is tough. If teachers and education had the backing of every business, we would get stuff done. We would get things going, a little bit quicker. So it's important that we realize education is not just in a school system. It's not just dealing with schools. For our students that are home, maybe some businesses can open up and say, hey, you want to do a virtual field trip here? We have to realize that we have to partner more with parents and business owners and, zoos and just anybody. I think COVID has showed everyone that as much as we want to be autonomous, we can't be. Even by yourself, we check on everybody, right? Just to make sure you're okay. And I think also we found out that it's important to make sure people are okay. One of the main things that Mr. Johnson said is that we need to give grace. We need to give grace to everybody, to parents, to teachers, to students. If a kid's work isn't turned in, maybe something happened. I know for me, if a kid hasn't submitted work in 7 days, I say, hey, is everything okay? Not, you didn't submit work. Hey, is everything okay? I think now we have to look at people's mindsets, mentalities. Are they in a good space? Are they in a good place? and realize as much as we want to educate them, if their mind isn't right, they're not going to be ready to educate. If you know, one thing the schools did is they feed people now. If you're hungry, you're not going to be learning. And that's another thing that I know my county, I'm in Orange County, Florida, that we have been feeding throughout the entire summer. Families can go up and get food. There's still going to be feeding for parents who have chosen to do the hybrid model. In Orange County, we only have 3 options. We have your kid goes to school, your kid stays home but is still connected to their school, and we call it launch ed, and they're on the computer with a teacher. Or where I work at Orange County Virtual School, and the kid has to withdraw from their school and go straight to virtual. So for me, I think looking at education, I think it's going to explode. It's going to definitely change how we look at education. You know, we looked at virtual teachers as, oh, they got an easy job. I know my sons, when I volunteer at my son's school, they thought I had an easy job. But this last 9 weeks of the year, when they realized they had to do virtual education, they realized it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. And so I think we realized that we have to utilize the technology and get technology into the hands of the students because they know how to use it. Give any kid an iPad, and they'll show, hey, grandma, let me show you this. Like, oh, you know, grandma's, hey, and then, hey, baby, let me, what is this? And I think it's another way we can connect the generations. Look at resources, look at the grandparents, or look at the retired teachers who are at home just chilling. Get help. So does education change? Absolutely. We have to look at technology and how we can get into everybody's hands, and also how we can, utilize, different resources and bridge the gaps between the age groups.
And Ms. Harris, as the retired educator on this panel, I think I can make probably a less politically correct statement about how the emergency response has impacted the future. My opinion as a retired educator is that it's been absolute negligence of that grace that Mr. Johnson spoke about, and just basic human care and respect. I think that what we can do locally in any of our respective communities is where the decisions about distancing and the attitudes are set based on local officials making decisions. We need to make contact with them as if, and it actually is, as if our lives depend on it. I think that it is, I am abhorred by our Department of Secretary and our president's stated intention to withdraw funds from Title I schools if they don't comply with their mandates. Every time I've seen a politician issue this mandate about the economy opening, I do a personal Google search to see if they have children or grandchildren. And my question that I've sent to them is, will your children go back into these settings that seem to be producing all of this anxiety? It is a very real dilemma that many parents don't have the opportunity to work from home. And they are in an impossible situation to have to choose between work and attending to their children's educational needs. And so I think that as a country, we have not responded from the top leadership down. I think that many locals are trying to look at their communities and do what's best. We can certainly look at the most high profile mayor we have here in Georgia with Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms taking a stance, and the audacity of the governor to try to silence her. But it is more than just self-preservation. We should not have to think about it in that sense, but that's where we are. We must, in spite of those around us who choose not to wear masks, who think that it's okay, in a matter of teaching our children and the adults how to be respectful of others, if not themselves, that it is critically important that as we look at this future of learning, and I don't think a solution is coming anytime immediately, we are reimagining not only how we interact, but in all of the uncertainty, we just have to do more than just wrench our hands and feel anxious. we need to make sure that as others play politics, that we are also just as savvy in education to make our point about how we can more effectively educate our children. Many children who struggle, particularly in rural districts, those who are children of color struggle even more. And so as we look at how the emergency response has impacted the future of learning, it has shaken us. We were all in shock back in March because we had to do that reimagining within days.
Yes.
And when you say a centuries old model of education, what had become a model over hundreds of years had to be reconfigured in days.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, the pandemic was what America needed to make changes, not only to the model of education, but many other facets. But we're on education right now.
Yes,
Ms. Harris, if I may add to that, one of those things, and definitely as a business major, doing a SWOT analysis was definitely looking at how this pandemic did expose or highlight some of those inequities
Absolutely.
that we already knew existed in our Black, brown, and poor communities. And so, but I want to encourage the parents here in this space that, just as Dr. Everett stated, many of us, even as educators and parents, were told on a Friday, oh, you're going to start digital learning on a Monday. And so people, were like, it created this frenzy, this anxiety of how am I going to do this? Who's going to keep my child? But I would like to also encourage parents that educators and parents were given minimal resources and made magic over the course of 3 days. I can also reassure you as an educator that your child's teacher and other educators, other adults encountering your child or responsible for your child, we're spending our summer preparing to give effective digital instruction during this time. So we were like, I know for me, I was thinking, I know I'm probably going to have to go back virtual, so I want to do it better this time. And so parents were sitting there thinking, my child's probably going to have to go on a digital platform. And so I'm going to try to figure out what can I do best for my child. And so trust and believe that through this partnership between parents, community members, and educators, that your child will receive the best quality education that he or she deserves in the state of Georgia.
Yes. And I just want to piggyback on what Mr. Johnston just said and just commend the administrators, the teachers, the parents, the community members that came together to make this happen in such a short period of time. It was beautiful because, like you said, we had to realize, Dr. Williams said earlier, that as much as we want to be autonomous, we are not. We are connected. And so it was beautiful seeing how quickly everyone jumped in to make things happen.
Absolutely.
And I also want to, I've been doing virtual instruction for 8 years, and I just want to say to the teachers and to the parents, the teachers really, like you said, Mr. Johnson, you didn't really have preparation. Going into the school year, they are going to be a lot more prepared. So take whatever didn't go right with grace and a grain of salt. They had no training. I do this for a living. This is what I do for a living. And so don't compare what I do to what a teacher did in a week. So for us, it happened during our spring break. So teachers never really got a break, and they haven't broke since the holiday break. And so for parents, please know that teachers know at some point they're gonna go back virtual. Like Mr. Johnson said, they're taking their own time, they're taking their own money, they're taking their own resources, like teachers have always done, to make sure that they are better prepared for this year. So we talk about how do we know if our kids are learning? Trust your teacher. Your teacher's gonna let you know. I promise you, trust your teacher.
Thank you. We're going to go ahead and segue over and jump into some questions that are coming in on our live stream. So one of the questions that we have is, how will you know that students are actually doing the work and that it's not someone else? How would we know?
We are hopeful that your child will not share their login information with anyone else. It is their personal login information. For K-5 for our district, we're utilizing Google Classroom. So that is that student's platform. So hopefully no one else should have access to that student's information. And for 6 through 12, it's courseware, same thing. They have their own individual login. No one else should have that login unless they share it with someone else.
What we do for us is we do something called discussion-based assessments. So it's our integrity checks throughout the assignments. And so for my students, they have to call me and literally have a phone conversation. And I say, hey, Mr. Johnson, what did you learn? And you have to tell me what you learned from that module. If you didn't learn, that meant something. I was like, well, you're submitting this kind of work, but you're not able to talk about this topic. So go back and look and go back and take notes, and then call me when you're ready to have a conversation about the module. So we use discussion-based assessments, and we call them our integrity checks. And I think school systems would be could utilize doing those integrity checks throughout the 9 weeks throughout the semester to make sure it's actually the student working.
That's really, really good. Integrity checks. I like that. We just got a comment in. As a former educator, I'd advise parents to always stay vigilant in your children's education. Parents are the child's first educator, teacher. Stay focused.
Yes. Thank you for that, Mrs. Ivy. You are exactly right.
Oh, I got to give y'all this question just because it made me laugh. Are parents going to receive FTE if we educate our own children?
That made me laugh too.
We're going to use it as free to educators.
Mr.
Free to
Dennis Lake is
educators.
the former student services person. He knows the answer to that question.
No.
Well, just to make a public
Well, it
answer,
depends on the avenue.
a public answer to that, no, parents will not receive the FTE. The FTE will still go to the school as long as that child is enrolled as a student in that school district.
Okay.
And that has not changed, right, Ms. McBride?
What steps are in place for children with chronic health?
That is correct.
If they need to come to the school for traditional school or extracurricular activities?
For parents in that situation, I would very strongly advise that they make personal contact with the school and the school nurse so they'll be sure, because every situation and every condition for the child is different. So we don't want to make it an assumption that one thing will apply to all children, especially if they have a chronic health condition that's different, that doesn't apply in the protocol that's already established. So that parent needs to reach out to the school and to be sure the school nurse is aware of that condition and what concern and address those concerns.
Okay.
Parents need to be aware that if that child has a 504 or has been identified as medically fragile, that they do have a right to request support from the school, but understanding that's only to the extent that the school would have provided had that child been in person on the campus. I think that the staff, I've not been told that nurses will not be available. And so they are still coming. Is that correct, Ms. McBride and Ms. Williams and Dr. Williams and those? So make sure that those rights and access to those students who have been identified as medically fragile or have 504 plans that address health or medical needs, that those are also applied as they set up a profile of learning for that child if they do online.
Okay. We've got another question in. For those using courseware, will they have flexibility for instruction or lecture time, or will they be attending class in real time but virtually?
For Thomasville City Schools, it depends on the grade level. But there is flexibility because we realize that some parents will be able to, for K-5, they will be able to see live versions of instruction, we realize, but for those that can't see it live during the day, they can always have a recording to go back and view. For those students in grades 6 through 12, it's all online anyway, so it's at their own pace. But teachers will be available at certain times on different scheduled days and times to provide support and answer questions if there are any. So it kind of depends on the child.
I know.
I think it's tough to make a blanketed response to that. Like, like you all were saying, it depends on your child's teacher, what your child, because right now they don't necessarily have the plans for what each day looks like, correct, in Thomasville? So I think it's tough to make a blanketed statement and say, okay, at 2:00 your child will be doing this, at 3:00. Just as you're asking the teachers to be flexible, we'll just make sure we're all flexible as well when we're looking at that.
For the county school systems, I know at the middle school, for remote learners, they have put together a remote learning team of teachers who will only do remote learning. And so for the remote learners, they have someone who will be doing 5th through 8th English, 5th through 8th math, and they will be in class real time virtually for any of our remote learners. But for the ones who are doing like Georgia Virtual School, that will be like just, I guess, recorded lectures or however Georgia Virtual School is set up. But I do know for the county, they have remote learning, and the remote learning will have a teacher. You will be in first period, second period, third period from 8 to 3:00 as if you are in the classroom. So they have put together teams for that.
And I was also gonna say scheduling is important here. That you keep that same routine, just as if he or she was getting on the school bus at 7 or 7:30, 8:00, have them to get up, eat breakfast, get dressed, and actually sit there in that office space just as if they're in a classroom, so that they have that sense of normalcy in regards to schooling. And they end at a certain time. And so that if the parent is working, the child, of course, middle school, high school has still sat there during the instruction to have some sense of what the teacher is talking about.
And Mr. Johnson, you mentioned getting up. I would also add going to bed. Have
Right.
a routine for going to bed.
I was gonna say they can't stay up and play Oregon Trail all night. No, Grand Theft Auto. I'm about to tell my age in a little bit.
Yeah, because I remember that.
I don't even know what Oregon Trail is.
We're together on that one. Neither do I. Okay. While I'm waiting for more questions to come in, I did kind of want to piggyback on the question about the medical condition that the student may have with the chronic illness. Not necessarily with chronic illnesses, but I know in the county, students had access to the school clinics. They were able to be bused from, maybe the elementary school over to the middle school to be seen. So I was reading through the protocols that they had, or some of the things that were sent out to the parents about returning to school. And they were saying that if a student came to school and was showing signs of COVID, that they would need to have testing. Are the school clinics prepared to offer those tests, or would that be on the responsibility of the parents to come and get the child and take them for testing to their pediatrician?
Are you talking about the COVID-19 test?
Yes.
Did you ask where the school's providing those testing?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
If a student comes to school and at some point during the school day begin presenting with symptoms, because there was something that was sent out a little while ago to parents saying, talking about the different scenarios of a child getting COVID and having to be tested and the quarantine and all of that. So I was just wondering if the school systems, the clinics that are offered by the schools, are they going to be offering that testing, or would that be something parents need to do outside of the school system?
I have Thomasville City Schools in front of me. Ms. McBride, if you have it, of course, I'll defer to you, but I can read those steps if you'd like.
Go ahead, please.
It says for nurse clinic, and this is Thomasville City Schools plan. The following steps will be taken. Students and staff who become ill are encouraged to seek treatment and consultation with their personal health care provider or the local health department. If warranted, a COVID-19 test is also recommended. Staff and parents are expected to self-report positive tests or potential exposure to the school nurse and building principal. When cases of COVID-19, either for students or staff, are confirmed, the system will work with the local Department of Public Health to respond rapidly. Response will be dictated by the nature of each case, and in extreme circumstances, they may result in the entire school returning to distance learning for some period, depending on the number of cases and nature of exposure. Thomasville City Schools will follow all relevant student and health privacy laws. Students and classes that are quarantined due to positive COVID-19 tests or exposure will be able to make up all work, and absent days will be excused. In the clinics, nurses will wear personal protective equipment and change as needed between students. Infrared thermometers will be used in schools when taking student and our staff temperatures. Please also keep in mind that children will still get sick with illnesses that are not COVID-19. To err on the side of caution, additional safety measures will be taken regarding all health issues. All students, let's see, I pulled your whole handbook down on that, Ms. McBride. Let's see, all students with a fever will be required to be fever-free for 3 days without the use of fever-inducing medicine. Students also will be required to bring a note from a physician indicating they are clear to return to school. And that is the city schools. I have the county schools. Let me see if I
think it's the same. Because
it is probably very similar.
I think theirs is the same as well.
It is probably very similar, especially since you said the superintendents were working together. And when all else fails, there is a CDC self-check website. It says if you are not feeling well and you want to check your symptoms, there is a link on the Thomas County School letter from the superintendent that indicates how you can access that site from the state of Georgia new COVID-19 hotline.
Okay. Thank you for that, Dr. Everett. Well, it seems we are out of questions, so I just want to.
Tiffany, I'd like to kind of share something that just came across my screen. So Dr. Everett mentioned the governor, and so apparently Georgia may impose, this is from the AJC, Georgia may impose a statewide start date of September 8th. So, you know, as Ms. McBride and Ms. Williams were talking about, things are changing every day.
Oh my God.
Or every minute. So, I mean, and it's on the AJC. So,
thanks, Mr. Johnson.
Right.
It's been crazy. So yes.
Wow.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
One thing I think
and you know,
very important to remember is just that this is all new for everyone. You know, even though we ended the school year virtually, we've never started a school year virtually, and we've never started during a pandemic. So it is just very important to remember that everyone be flexible, because things are changing, you know, minute by minute, honestly.
Yeah, that's been our key word around the district office is flexibility, flexibility, flexibility.
Right.
And we need parents to be mindful. We are human. We're going to make mistakes. We're not going to always make the best decision, but it's mindful. I want to encourage the parents to just try to be energetic and keep us at the top of their list, and know that we're trying to make the best decision possible as things constantly change on a day-to-day, as you can see, moment by moment basis. If they have issues or concerns, I'm going to ask that parents not blast the school systems on Facebook or social media. Please reach out to your schools individually rather than blast us and post things on social media. We could get a lot of things solved if we just communicate via other channels.
Yes.
I agree. Totally concur with what you just said.
Okay.
I know that the county is offering a it's called the Buzz Hotline, and parents are able to call that number if they do have questions specifically for their schools. They can call that number instead of calling separate schools and get the answers that they're looking for. But you can go to the Thomas County Schools website to get that Buzz Hotline number. But
Yeah, I
please
was
call.
jealous of their
Right,
buzz
please-
line. I'm very jealous of their buzz line. I'm trying to get something from Thomasville City Schools. I'm very jealous of that buzz line.
It's been very helpful.
I
Well,
bet.
Miss McBride, that sounds like an opportunity for the Department of Student Services of Thomasville City
I
Schools
am on it.
to
I am
not
on it.
reinvent the wheel. Just get with Miss Williams and
Yes, ma'am.
get that done.
Well, I want to thank each and every one of the panelists for joining me tonight. Mr. Justin Johnson, Miss Latoya Williams, Dr. Sabrina Everett, and Miss Tina McBride. Before we end, I just want to ask you guys, are there any parting words that you would like to share to close out our broadcast?
I would just like to say that children and adults from childrenshealth.com, they said, what does your child need? And they said that children need to feel safe. They need to belong. They need to have a feeling of control. Well, adults have those same needs. And Dr. Williams earlier said it's going to take the entire community. We have loosely talked about the village raising the child. Well, if there's ever been a test, this is it. And I would say flexibility needs to be that key word, if I can just reiterate that. And patience, patience, patience. It's not that we don't know what we're doing, but it is that we don't know. We are, and I say we because I am a part of the community, even though I am not a part of the school system any longer. We are doing all that we can collectively to make a transition to normalcy. We all want that.
Yes.
It has delayed many things in my personal life that I could not do. And I'm sure that I'm not unique in that, because you hear that each time. But we need to understand that all of us have the same goal. We can be as patient as we can be. But I also want to add, because this is a forum that comes from Disciples of Jesus Ministries, I think that we should use prayerful consternation to move through this pandemic. And I believe that's a personal commentary, but I do believe that that has to be a part of the plan and the protocol as well.
And we've talked a lot about the academic needs of our children and our districts. Just know, as educators, we're also concerned about the social and emotional needs of our children, especially if they're going to be virtually learning. That really concerns educators, because we are used to our students, for the most part, being face-to-face, and it's easier to address those concerns. So we're very concerned and looking for resources of how to provide some connections and be able to support those needs that our children have for social and emotional needs. That is a great concern for us.
And I'd like to, definitely commend Disciples of Jesus Ministries for putting this panel together, and also this platform for the community. It's important. I can tell you through some of my advocacy work across the state, this is a hot topic. And so getting this firsthand from members of the community and the experts here is like, second to none. And so thank you all. Continue to be a part of the community. This is your community. And so, reach out and build those strong relationships, because as we've seen before, when we went out for COVID-19, we are in this together, but I know that we are truly in this together to make sure that we teach and we treat the whole child. Dealing with those academic and social and emotional well-being as well, but also making sure that our educators and parents get the adequate resources. So thank you all so much for having me on this evening.
Yes, and I want to elaborate on Mr. Johnson. Thank you all so much for choosing me to be a part of the panel. We hope that this will continue and this won't be the only one that you all decide to do, because this is very important to continue to have these discussions throughout this process of changes. As things continue to unfold and change daily, we want to ensure that our parents know the information and they hear it from educators firsthand rather than speculate.
Yeah.
Okay, well, if there's nothing else, I cannot let you go without saying a huge thank you to Dr. Demetria Williams for joining us as well. She had to depart a
Yes.
little bit early, but her contribution was greatly appreciated.
Mhm.
Thank you all
Yes,
for
indeed.
watching and sending in your questions. We thank you for a great evening.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Ms. Harris.
Thank
Thank
you, Ms.
you.
Harris.